Friends, we're back. We got a special wine for you today, too. So, this is my second year subscribing to the Gary V Empathy Club. I actually have a couple of connections with Gary V. I haven't met him yet, although I will in the next year. Um, my trainer only trains me, Gary V's wife, and Gary V. So I have a personal connection to him. I know that some of you love him, some of you don't. But my hair is looking crazy right now. But I think he's a good guy. I think he's a really good guy. I like his energy. And and yeah, also my wife has a childhood friend who translated their books into Polish, and they stay at our house in New York. So pretty crazy stuff. So anyway, Gary's got his own branded wine, Empathy. And it's kind of like, I get a case of the red, white, and rosé. The second year in the row, second year he's had it. So it's actually really, really good. It's actually really, really good. I'm generally not a fan of rosés outside of southern France. Um, I think they can be a little bit too cheap tasting, but I have to say that I think Empathy is very fruit forward, but I don't know. I think it's wonderful. It's like tastes like watermelon, like tons and tons of watermelon when you drink this wine. And regarding what what version 25 was saying about Gary V, he is a motivator, right? He's an ENFP. So it's not necessarily that the content is so like mind blowing. This is no disrespect to him, by the way, at all. But the main thing that he does is kind of like Tony Robbins, right? He just gets you energized and amped up. He's a motivator. And so I like his positivity, and I like that he's always on the grind, but he loves life, right? He loves life. That's what I like. So anyway, on to the questions. So we've got first one: how to date a girl who had a previously friendly relationship with back in college. Context: she was dating a guy who was in their same group of friends, and now it's been years since college. There's been some space, and the question is, since I've talked before about how space is very, very important for leaving the friend zone, should I show interest or be indirect with her? Now, I actually have a lot of questions here because it's relevant to me answering the question. So when it says like re-engaging with her again, what's the context? So are you guys hanging out again randomly? It's been a couple of years and you found yourself in the same city and you were thinking about reconnecting, or like, because this is very relevant. It's very relevant. If we're talking about saying like a message out of the blue to her, I just wouldn't recommend doing that. It wouldn't make any sense. Now, my guess is that that's not the case. My guess is that she's around, at least. Maybe they ran into each other recently. Maybe he wants to restart things. Well, very easy way to do it. And I'm making tons of assumptions here because I don't have all the information, but very easy way to do it is to invite her to a party. So you want to be indirect at first, right? Because you don't want her to get the impression that you've been thinking about her since college, right? That's not very good. You don't want her to think about that. You don't want her. So it's kind of like, oh, you're in the same city. It's been a long time. Hey, I'm having a party this weekend. You should come. Bring your friends. And that way you reintroduce her into your friend group. And then in that context, so this is important because now when she sees you again, now you're a social leader. And so now she's automatically a little bit more, she's automatically more primed to be interested in you. And then you can sort of be cocky with her and you can be funny and you can mess around with her, right? I still wouldn't go all in with her immediately. You still want to be relatively indirect about this, but you want to set a new behavior paradigm for yourself with her. You guys haven't seen each other in years, but now you're talking to her, and you're talking to her like a guy who wasn't in the friend zone before. You're talking to her like a guy who's confident and feels like he has options with women. So that's my recommendation for that. It's really important, and I think it's a good segue thing because I had a situation with a client recently. It's really important that your frame here is not bent on trying to get her. Okay, guys who are very good with women. It's not to say they don't like a girl and they don't want a girl, right? And that's a target for them, but they don't have this thing where they obsess upon getting the girl. They're doing everything they possibly can to get her. So I want you to have like tactical awareness in a big plane flying directly overhead. So one negative of being in South Jersey. You don't want to be in the mindset that when you're acting cocky and everything, that you're doing it to get a reaction out of her. Okay? You can understand how some of this stuff works, but you don't want to fully invest in that paradigm, because that's when they eat you alive. And I had the situation with a client recently, and he was really stuck in the friend zone. And we had some issues in the sense that there wasn't enough time to create the space necessary to really pull yourself out of the friend zone. I got to tell you, like, if you get put in the friend zone, you can get out, but you need time. And usually you need some other things in the context of the environment to help push you out as well. It's you just can't like flip a switch and say, "Hey, I'm no longer your friend, now I'm your lover." It takes time. You have to change your perception. And changing a woman's perception requires pushing her. Now, you can push too much. You can push too much, but the problem is that the last thing you want to do when you push too much is then to become sort of like apologetic and looking like, "Oh, what's going on? Are you okay? Are you okay?" Right? You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. What you if you give her a push like that, you need to really she needs to feel a little bit like you just don't give a shit. And usually this is where time comes into the picture, because then there's some space between the two of you, and then you see her again, you can act kind of normal with her. And if she acts sort of weird, then you can say, "Hey, what's going on? We used to be blah blah blah." Like, so just to give you an idea, this stuff is not easy. It's like it's very high level surgery. And the main thing that you want to practice here is being a guy who's attractive to women in general, because the more that you adopt that mindset, whether or not you get this girl back, and remember, it's been years, so you don't even know really who she is. You probably have some fantasy of her. Just to keep in mind that everything is about the process, and it's about building up you. And the woman that you ultimately get through this, the women that you get through this, that is what is important. Thank you. So yeah, so then the next question. So I got another question. This was a question from one of my clients, actually, and I answered it for him, but I wanted to share it for you guys too. He said, "Why is subcommunication so powerful?" Because one of the things we did with him, he's dating this girl, and she was just, let's just say that she was really acting as if she had the frame and the dynamic, and he was trying to figure out these tactical things. And I was like, just, cut her off, and that's it. And she's going to come back to you. She's going to get back to you within a week, and she's going to triple text you. And it's exactly what happened. Actually, the only thing that was wrong about that was that she did it in half a week, not a week. So now they're kind of like back engaging with each other again. But the problem is that she is really, she hasn't quite been brought to heel yet. She's very immature. She's got a little bit of damage, and she's playing a lot of games. And he put the foot down before with his sub communication, right? He just didn't engage, because what she was doing is she was saying to him like, "Hey, I don't really want this or that, like sorry, like I know that you're like interested," because he was, they had been dating, and he just sort of went towards a relationship with her, and then she kind of freaked out. It was like, okay, that's fine. But the thing is, then guys, this is a big red flag with a girl, because a girl who's healthy isn't going to behave like this. She's not going to behave like this. This is a girl who's been burned, got some, and it's not to say that the damage isn't repairable, but it's, she's a girl who likes to be treated poorly. And guys, remember, there is a difference between a girl who likes to be treated, who likes boundaries, right? Because every girl likes boundaries. There's a difference between a girl who aims to please, right? Wants to be in the frame of the guy. There's a difference between that girl and a girl who requires you to put her in some sort of marginal place in order to behave well. That's a sign of dysfunction. Okay. And I want you to internalize it, because a lot of guys, a lot of the manosphere information is really counter reaction. It's a counter reaction to a bunch of garbage in the mainstream. And we always have to think in terms of third position, right? So what's the third position here? And you want to be someone who sets boundaries and has a strong frame. But if you have to abuse a girl to keep her in line, if you have to treat her like shit to keep her around, then that's not a girl that you want to spend time with. She's just not worth it. She's not worth it. You'll never be able to have a healthy relationship. So at any rate, yeah, I should be indoors, right? I'm spreading coronavirus all over this backyard. This backyard, it's all over the place. I love it. I love that stuff. But we're not talking about that today. So the reason that subcommunication, just to answer the question directly, the reason that subcommunication is so important and so powerful is because subcommunication is action, right? Remember they say actions speak louder than words. Subcommunication is action. And that is why it is so powerful, because you can tell a girl, I don't want anything to do with you. Okay, but then you still hang out with her. You're talking, but your actions don't indicate that. Or subcommunication is the complete opposite. So one of the things I like, and I talk about this in one of my blog posts, you should read it, Subcommunication and the Art of Mixed Messages. But one of the things that's really powerful to do is to actually be like, a lot of guys, their subcommunication is off, so they'll try to like pretend they're not interested, but then they'll sort of angle themselves near the girl. And this is something that one of my clients recently with this girl he liked was making a mistake with, right? He was sort of, it's a learning process, right? He's doing really well, but these are some deeply embedded patterns. And it's like, okay, you're pulling back, you're pushing, but you're still way too invested in her. And the subcommunication is compromising that strategic initiative. So, hey Dougal, um, that was interesting. So the other thing, so if you do the opposite, where like you actually show that you're not really that, thumbs up to you too. You actually show that you're not really that interested in your actions, or you're not really invested, but you tell her, you compliment her. This can be really, really powerful. It's like saying, oh, I love hanging out with you, but then you don't actually try to hang out with her. Or you don't text her very much, but when you do text her, you're warm with her. That really throws girls off, because they're used to guys who are paying them a lot and saying, cocky stuff, which subcommunication is not very good with that. So that's what I wanted to really emphasize, that subcommunication is powerful because subcommunication is action. It's what you're doing, whereas usually regular communication is just what you're saying. Let's see, I got some questions in here. So how do different types of alcohol affect your pheromones? As I take a big swig, Ben, I don't really know the answer to that. It's a really good question, but I'm sure it affects it for the negative. I mean, alcohol is estrogenic, so it can't be positive for you. I mean, I think that, look, I like drinking, I like wine, especially at my parents' house right now. I mean, in some ways it's not great but there's a real tradition here around cocktail hour wine and wine with dinner. And I love it. I wrote an email recently about it, guys. And, we have the four of us here. And then twice a week, my sister and her family come over, and we have had, hey, don't tell Governor Murphy, but we did have an Easter party with my cousin, and we're all self-isolating in our own group. So it's not like we're all partying with randos. We are only seeing each other. But the point of this, right, is that so I like drinking wine. I don't really drink much of anything else normally, but I like wine. It's probably not good for the pheromones. Because my testosterone is going to be lower as a result of drinking it. So, but that's just a hypothesis. It's a good one to check out, though. And I do wonder if it affects things, like if you go to a bar. My guess is it's mostly just you're drunk and in zombie mode, but it would be interesting to see if people connected when they were drunk because of a pheromonal change that wouldn't exist normally. So, do you think you can still be friends with someone you break up with? Uh, I think that there are plenty of exceptions to what I'm about to say, that it's not a hard and fast rule, but yes, I think you can. I think you can be friends with someone you broke up with. I don't think you usually can. And I think usually the impulse to be friends with someone you're breaking up with comes from a position of weakness. You're not able to allow that tie to die. You're not able to cut yourself loose. So you sort of maintain some sort of ghost of what you had by trying to have some sort of platonic dynamic together. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. And in 95 out of 100 cases, if you actually give yourself the space and then you go off and date, you don't care about seeing that person anymore. Like it doesn't matter. Maybe they can be in your life in like a very light way. Maybe they can be like an acquaintance in a group, someone in someone who you can see and you can shoot the shit with and it's okay. But we're talking about like being a friend with. Like I'm friends with this person. Yeah, I'm friends with my ex. Very, very rarely is that something that comes from a good position. Very, very rarely is that something that adds value to both parties. Usually it comes from weakness and it comes from an inability to let go of something that is no longer serving you. And if you're breaking up, break up. And maybe in years you can see, and it's important to be cordial and not to feel bitterness. Maybe in years you can get back together and things would be different. But yeah, I think it's usually bullshit when people say that stuff. In your experience, beer and wine affect pheromones for the worse, but hard liquor in moderation augments them. Well, I can tell you this, Ben. I know that alcohol affects me differently. Now, I don't know if you mentioned pheromones, so I was speaking from that capacity. I know that you feel different depending on the alcohol you drink. I feel like shit when I drink beer. Um, the combination of the hops and the heavy carb load. Not that I have like really much of an issue with carbs anymore. I did for one point, but I don't like drinking beer. I mean, I'll have really light beer, like if it's hot outside, I can be okay with that. But I don't really enjoy it, and I don't enjoy it. So why drink something you don't enjoy? I mean, I drink if I'm doing something like beer pong. I'm usually doing White Claw now. I'm on Team White Claw at this point. You just feel better, and I have noted that when it comes to vodka, well, clear alcohol affects you less much less badly than darker alcohol. So, for instance, um, and also the level to which it's distilled affects it too. So, if I go to Poland on a regular basis, I'm moving to Poland next year. If you get vodka and you have it, make sure it's 6 times distilled. So in the States, that's going to be Tito's, right? Tito's vodka, which isn't very expensive. Tito's, by the way, has won every single tasting competition out there. It's won every single tasting competition in America. And Grey Goose, which everyone spends a buttload of money for, is always ranks. Well, I'm not going to say always ranks last, but doesn't do very well. It's not very good. It's not very good vodka, to be honest. So Tito's is 6 times distilled, and it makes a big difference. At my wedding, I mean, I had the people there where everyone was having like all the guys there were having like over 20 shots. There's some that had there's one guy who had like 43 shots. He was a bodybuilder. He had 43 shots. And I can tell you there's no hangover. I mean, you feel like an idiot, you feel stupider, like you feel like your IQ's dropped, but you don't feel a hangover like, oh, my head hurts. I also have found that wine, I tend to get really like there's much more of a cleaner energy with vodka, whereas with wine, it's in the beginning I get really talkative, which is why I like doing these periscopes when I drink wine. But as the night goes on, you get really tired. So I do think that alcohol affects you differently. I don't know about that from a pheromonal perspective, but that's interesting. Yeah. What percentage of cheaters do you think come back? What do you mean by that, Mike? Can you elaborate? What you mean by percentage of cheaters that come back? Like, do they cheat and try to get back together with somebody else? I mean, I'll just talk in the meantime. I'll just talk about cheating in general. I have never cheated. I came very close once with an ex, um, who was effectively cheating on me, and I sort of she was like putting me through hell basically. And it was at the time we had become long distance because I was on a long trip in South America, and um, I didn't do it in the end. I almost wish I did, to be honest. I almost wish I did, but There's a whole story actually. If you guys go to my blog, you can see how I know you're a cheater, and I tell the story. Okay, I tell the story. Back then, it was still relatively fresh. I mean, it wasn't fresh, but it was like only 4 years. Now it's been like almost a decade since the event. It's a really good story. I really recommend it. How I know you're a cheater. Just check it out on my blog. But um, the main thing with cheaters in general, like cheating is not personal. If you're cheating on someone, it's because of some sort of weakness within you. And it could also be like a lack of integrity, but I consider lack of integrity to be a weakness. Because if you don't want to be exclusive with the girl, then just tell her you don't want to be exclusive with her. Tell her you're not gonna, she wants to be with you. Part of the deal is that you hook up with other girls when you want to. And if she doesn't like that, then she can leave, right? It's not the way that I like to live, but I respect that people do that because they're honest and upfront about it. If you're a guy and you make a commitment to a woman, you're saying, I'm not going to cheat, I'm not going to see anybody else, and then you go out and another girl gives you some interest and you hook up with her, then you're a piece of shit. I mean, not to say that it's unforgivable. I know people make mistakes, but it should be acknowledged as weakness. It should be acknowledged as something that you did when you were coming from a weak position. And it, and I think you can only change, so to speak, if you really take ownership about that and you like understand the part of you that did it. If you don't understand the part of you that did it, you'll do it again. And so a lot of people who cheat come back, and part of the reason that they have this thing is the Madonna whore complex. So usually it's that they cheat on the Madonna with the whore, or in the case of the woman, they cheat on the provider with the lover, right? Alpha fucks, beta bucks. But sometimes the opposite can happen too. Sometimes a woman will cheat on an asshole with a guy who's kind to her, actually. Sometimes they'll do that. It's not as common, but it does occur because if they're really not getting what they want, if they're with a guy who's really cruel to them, they will jump on with a guy who treats them kind, and it's not going to be as like erotic maybe, but they're going to have sex with him because they're going to feel the comfort of having sex with someone who treats them well. So the point of this is that it's very common that, hey, thank you, Ben. Thank you. I want to see you do some too, because I think that you are an ENTP as well, if I'm not mistaken. But I wanted to make a little last comment. Someone said to have another drink, so I'm doing it. Cheaters usually come back because cheaters usually cheat from a position of weakness, right? ISTP, I see that. I see that for sure. I see that. They usually cheat from a position of weakness, right? That's where it comes from. It comes from that. Because if you wanted to be done with a girl, you just break up with her, right? You just break up with her. You say, okay, I'm done with this stuff, you know. So so that's it, guys. I mean, do you guys have any more questions? Any more questions here? Or are we good to go? Any more questions? Any more questions? Last call. Last call. Before I go and finish this Axis and Allies game with my nephew. All right, friends. I'm not seeing anything here. I appreciate you all. Love you.